Hello everyone, actually into today's third video. So busy old day at Gas Service today. We started off with the second winter 2019-2020 season model roundup. That's getting 13 long-range models together to see what they're all showing for the winter. So that's quite an interesting watch. That video will be placed on the winter updates page later on with a written summary going over everything that we discuss in the video. Also, weekend forecast, of course, your detailed weekend look ahead as always on a Saturday. So, going to be turning dry but also cold. And this video will cover that time frame, of course, and extend out beyond that. And I'll talk you through what's happening tomorrow at Gas Service at the end of this video. But this is the week 10-day video update, so we're going to have a look at weather for the next 10 days. We'll extend out beyond that with the extended GFS and ECM ensembles. And we'll have a look at the CFS feature at the end of the video for the next 4 weeks as well. So let's get on with it then. We're going to start off in the tropical Atlantic. Now, a few hours ago, we had 2 tropical storms. So you remember yesterday we looked at this and there was a yellow X in the Gulf of Mexico. That actually went up to Tropical Storm Olga around 12 or so hours ago. But very quickly it dissipated and now it's gone. But at one point, around sort of 12, 18 hours ago, we did have Tropical Storm Olga there in the Gulf of Mexico just for a few hours. We have another tropical storm just here though. This one is Pablo. We have Tropical Storm Pablo. Now yesterday that was an was it a yellow or an orange X, a disturbance area, and there's only about a 40% chance of that becoming a tropical storm, but it really sort of ramped itself up very quickly yesterday. And it did in fact reach tropical storm status. So currently we have got Tropical Storm Pablo just there, giving maximum sustained winds of 45 miles per hour with a minimum central pressure of 990 millibars. It's moving east-southeast at 9 miles per hour. Now, let's click on Pablo and see what he's forecast to do. So, the latest track for Pablo has him just there. And maintaining tropical storm status through the next day or so. But by tomorrow afternoon, Sunday afternoon, going post-tropical and curving northwards to be in that sort of position by the time we get through to Tuesday. The remains of Pablo, Tropical Storm Pablo, then probably merge with an area of low pressure in the North Atlantic in the middle of next week, and that will start to reinvigorate the jet stream, which by this time next week probably turns us in the UK much more unsettled. And yeah, we probably see a return of the deluge in around a week or so's time, but we will get a few days of drier weather before that happens. Of course, Pablo is moving through the Azores, so another battering for them. These are the islands of the Azores just here, so going to be more disruptive weather coming up around the Azores sort of today and into tomorrow. Talking of disruptive weather, it's been very wet across England and Wales today. This is the latest radar picture from Gasworthy's. So the band of rain that's been stuck across parts of northern England, Wales, southwest England, the north and west Midlands, producing copious amounts of rain for around 24 hours, is finally moving now. It's finally on the move. East Anglia and southeast England have been mostly dry through this rain event, but the rain is now pushing into the southeast, telling us that a cold front is on the move. We're seeing a clearance of the rain across northern England into Wales. That will push in through the Midlands and southwest England during the course of this afternoon. The rain probably by the end of the afternoon across East Anglia, southeast England. A different air mass behind that rain, so showers across the north and the west, some of them quite heavy, and you can see from those bright colours, and may turn a little bit wintry over high ground of the Scottish hills and mountains and highlands through the course of the afternoon. This cold front marks a big temperature contrast. So this is xcweather.co.uk showing today's latest temperatures as of, what time are we? As of 8 minutes past 4 in the afternoon. So you can see 20 degrees has been achieved on the other side of the channel. We've got two weather stations flashing away there at 20 degrees, both of them in the channel and down into northern France. We haven't reached 20 degrees in the UK, I don't think, but even so, it's been pretty warm in that southeast corner. 18 degrees, for example, at Headcombe Aerodrome, Southend-on-Sea at 17. We've got Watchisham at 16. Hertsmanzow at 17 degrees. Leeds Airport at 18 degrees. So around 17, 18 degrees, up to Celsius in the extreme southeast corner. But you'll notice you don't have to go very far north to lose those orange and yellow colours. We've got those higher temperatures, and it turns much, much cooler. So we get up into the Midlands. For example, we've got Church Lawford at just 7 degrees, and obviously pouring with rain there as well. Very cold and wet day in the Midlands. And going further north, it gets even colder than that. Nottingham, 2 o'clock in the afternoon at just 5 degrees Celsius. Leeds Bradford Airport at just 4 degrees Celsius. These are very, very cold temperatures for a late October afternoon. Leeming at 6 degrees, and so on it goes up to Newcastle at 17 degrees. Into Scotland, Strathallan is at 9, and Aviemore is at 7. And over into Northern Ireland, we've got Glenay at 6 degrees and Belfast at 8 degrees. So these warmer temperatures in the far southeast are going to be pushed out of the way very rapidly through this afternoon and into this evening. And it's these colder temperatures that are going to be holding sway. They're going to be dominating over the coming days. And it will be particularly notable at night. We're going to get a series of frosty nights, I think. Starting from Sunday night to Monday and then going through from Wednesday to Thursday. Expect several frosty nights with temperatures going sub-zero. We're talking about sort of -2, -3, -4 for some northern parts of the country, I think, through the on some of the nights through the early and middle part of the week. Going to feel like a little taste of winter, perhaps. That's going to cause a drop in the central England temperature. So this is the CT from Hadley, and we're currently provisionally up to yesterday, the 25th of October, standing at 10.9. We have now gone under 11 degrees. It's an anomaly of minus 0.0. So we're basically bang on average. But this is only going to go one way. This is going to carry on falling now from today onwards through to the end of the month. So I am beginning to wonder now, it depends how cold the nights get, but I am beginning to wonder whether we might actually go under 10 degrees with the CET. If we go sort of to, let's say, 9.9, then I think that would be the coldest October that we've seen since probably 2012 or 2008. We went over this the other day, in a video the other day. So it would be the coldest October for really quite a long time if we go under 10 degrees. I'm not guaranteeing that's going to happen, but we're at 10.9 now. We've got several cold and frosty nights to come, and we normally get a downwards correction that shaves off of around 0.2 or 0.3. So if we take like 0.2 or 0.3 of a degree off, with the general temperature is into the low 10s by Thursday, then it's not outside the realm of impossibility, but we might see the CT going under 10 degrees this October. Would be our first genuinely cold of an average month of the year, set against 61 to 1990 as well, of course. So all eyes, I think, will be on the CT next month. Now, we are going to get a few days of drier but colder weather, as we talked about in the weekend forecast, and I've explained at the start of this video. However, I don't think we're going to have to wait very long at all before the Atlantic returns, before the Atlantic strikes back, and we're back into the deluge again, I think, through the first week of November now. So, these are the 500 millibar high anomaly flow charts from Penn State University. Excuse me. We've got the ECMWF on the top, and the GFS, which we will have a look in a moment, is on the bottom. So 500 millibars is an area in actually high pressure, low pressure are being moved around by the jet stream. Red extrapolates high pressure blue to low pressure. These are the mean flow charts for the week to 10-day time frame, and you can see what the ECM is doing. It looks a bit ominous for areas that are already very wet with high river levels. It's just bringing a very, very deep trough of below average heights from the Atlantic, deep area of low pressure heading in from the Atlantic into the West Europe. A little bit of a southerly tracking jet stream as well. There's some higher pressure up towards Greenland that is forcing the jet stream southwards. So cold and wet through the first week of November. As I say, that's taking us to around day 10. It's going to be the 5th of November. And the GFS is, if anything, even more unsettled. Look at this. It's got a deep trough of below average height centred right over the top of the country. Again, a little bit of blocking up there towards Greenland. Jet stream is forced southwards. That looks like a deluge on the way through the first week of November now. So, yes, we're going to get 3 or 4 drier days, maybe 5 drier days, from tomorrow through to Thursday. But after that, I think we are unleashing the Atlantic again through the first week of November. And this autumn is now beginning to get shades of the autumn of 2000. I'm going to have to go over those charts to see what happened in the autumn of 2000. But I remember it was exceptionally wet autumn, right from September through to early December. It's just continuous Atlantic onslaught. And by the time we got into November, there was unfortunately some really quite serious flooding across several parts of the country. Hopefully we won't see any devastating flooding. But this autumn is beginning to take on shades of the autumn of 2000, I think. And what we're seeing there with the 500 millibar height anomaly flow charts for the first week of November, or the first 5 days of November, I suppose, is looking really quite ominous. We can see this again with the GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. We're looking at London today, so the red line is a 30-year upper air temperature average for London. We're starting off above average with the temperature today. It's relatively warm in the southeast, but these warm temperatures are on the way out. Temperatures are going to slide through the rest of today and tonight. I'm only going to a cold snap through the early and middle part of the coming week, below average temperatures, leading to cold and frosty nights. Then the temperatures start to stage a little bit of a recovery towards the end of next week, only going back up towards average, but certainly losing the cold temperatures that we're going to have in the next 4 or 5 days. And then just staying quite close to the 30-year temperature average with those upper air temperatures through the first week into the second week of November. But more dramatic, I think, is the precipitation. So we've got today's wet weather, of course, to get out of the way first. Then we're going into a drier spell for the rest of October. So, but after today's out of the way, the rest of October is looking dry. On the first day of November, which of course is Friday next week, we see that the rainfall spikes are returning, and then big rainfall spikes just carrying on through the first week of November. Again, that's a kind of thing that we tend to see when we've got a bit of deluge coming up. So a very, very rapid change towards much more unsettled and substantially wetter conditions taking place through the first week of November, and it looks like it then stays quite unsettled even into the second week of the month. Temperature anomalies, where are you? There we go. Temperature anomalies from the 26th of October to the 3rd of November. Overall colder than average, below average temperatures for the UK, for Ireland, for much of Scandinavia, Northern France, Low Countries too. So as I say, I've got several cold nights coming up. Any change to something a bit milder in around a week's time, that's outside of this time frame really. So yes, it's going to be colder than average as an anomaly, as a temperature anomaly from the 26th of October to the 3rd of November. Precipitation anomalies look like that. Still rather on the drier side for Scotland, and perhaps northeast England too. We go further south, it still looks wetter than average. This is of course taking into account today's wet weather. So from tomorrow, these should look drier than average for a couple of days. But then as the wet weather from the 1st of November onwards starts to come further into this time frame, so these will trend wetter again, I think, as they start to cover more and more of that first week of November. So that's how the GFS is looking for Tuesday. We're under high pressure. This is a cold ridge of high pressure. Cold air is coming around the side of high from the north, but it will be mainly dry. We are going to get a few days of drier but colder weather up to middle of the week. As the high begins to drift over towards the east of us, I think we start to import more sort of moisture into the high pressure. The humidity will lift up, the dew points will go up, and what that's probably going to do with cold surface temperatures is cause fog. So I would suspect that by the middle of the week, the issue really shifts from sort of frost more towards dense fog, perhaps around Wednesday and Thursday. So it's a little bit fraught with danger forecasting fog in this country these days, because we don't get anywhere near as much fog as we used to a few years ago. I've explained this in videos before. Of course, back sort of 50, 60, 70 years ago, we used to have great smogs. But then in the early 1960s, the government at the time passed the Clean Air Act, which took out lots of particles from the air caused by those huge sort of smoke billowing chimneys. So gradually over the years, over the decades, we have seen the amount of fog that we get reduced, but not completely gone. And in the right circumstances, we can still get dense patches of fog. And this could be one of those scenarios that might see some quite dense fog as we get through to the middle of next week. Even compared to like 10, 20 years ago, we don't get as much fog as we used to. So there has been quite a dramatic reduction in fog days, I think, over the past few years. But as I say, in the right circumstances, we can still get pretty dense fog. So we have high pressure there over country still to Thursday, but you'll notice low pressure gathering out of the Atlantic. This low just here, of course, contains the remains of Tropical Storm Pablo, what we were talking about at the start of the video. And as we go through to the end of the week and into the weekend, well, here comes the low pressure. The Deluge comes back. We're up to Saturday, 2nd of November, a week away. And low pressure very much back in the ascendancy, bringing more bouts of rain in from off the Atlantic. As we're heading towards the extended range, moving up towards day 10, we just continue to see these low pressures moving in from off the Atlantic. But you will notice that high pressure is building over Scandinavia and going to the north of the UK. So with the low pressure out here, we've got a bit of a battle taking place. These low pressures are trying to bring in westerly winds, but of course a high pressure over Scandinavia is trying to push easterly winds over the country. And what this is likely to do, probably not going to produce anything particularly cold initially, but what it is likely to do is just cause weather fronts to slow up, to slow down, potentially become stuck over the country. So this could turn into a very, very wet spell through the first week of November. That's day 10, which is bonfire night, and it looks pretty grim actually now for bonfire night. Look at this low pressure that's sitting just to the southwest of the country. Again, weather fronts with this are sort of strung out. They're being blocked from their typical progress west to east by this ridge that's sitting up to the northeast. And this time of year, these sort of scenarios can produce a lot of rain. So watch out as we go into the first week of November. Things turn very wet. This battle continues as we go on. So we're moving into the second week of November now. If anything, that high pressure up to the northeast is actually beginning to show signs of winning the battle at this point. So the low pressures and their attendant weather fronts are becoming more centred out to the west of us, as this high pressure up to the northeast is having a really good go at turning wind into the east and pulling cold air in from Scandinavia and northwestern Russia. However, it doesn't quite come off as this low pressure deepens in the Atlantic, throws up another bout of wet weather, no doubt. So as far as we can go, by the way, to Monday, the 11th of November. I mean, we've got to watch out, of course, that high pressure lurking up to the northeast, see what that's going to do. But I think the main story there is definitely one of rain, and potentially very significant amounts of rain through the first week of November as those fronts come up against that Scandinavian high, grind to a halt, and are unable to clear the country in their usual west to east fashion. And the rainfall totals at this time of year from that kind of situation can really clock up. GM looks like that. So high pressure is in control through the middle of next week, bringing lots of dry and fine weather through to the second half of next week. The ridge is collapsing. Low pressure is remorselessly moving in from off the Atlantic. So with the GM, we finish up looking very unsettled. There we go, wet and windy by day 10, which is a bonfire night. The Deluge is back in business. ECM looks like that. Again, high pressure is dominating the weather through the middle part of the week. It's a cold week, so I expect cold and frosty nights, and by midweek probably an increased risk of fog as we sort of increase the moisture within that ridge. Second half next week sees the ridge collapsing, low pressure then back in business from off the Atlantic, and it just gets more and more unsettled as we move into extended range with the ECM, so that by the time we get through to day 10, which is bonfire night, we look very, very wet and windy and unsettled indeed. Notice it is raising heights. ECM is raising heights towards Greenland, not as much towards Scandinavia though. So there's a bit of uncertainty about that. But the jet stream is kind of like on a northwest-southeast trajectory. It just looks very wet and potentially rather cool, I think, by day 10 with the ECM. These are the options that are on the table within the ECM ensembles today for day 10, which, as I've explained, is bonfire night, the 5th of November. So we have 19 members of the ECM ensembles with below average heights out to west. This is from the Icelandic Met Office, of course. 19 members of the ECM ensembles with low pressure out to west, so that's high pressure to the northeast. So that's a proper battleground UK scenario. Could be very wet as weather fronts are coming up against that ridge that's trying to bring in an easterly flow. Westies are trying to push the fronts on, but the fronts are coming up against that ridge of high pressure, and we could be very wet from that kind of scenario. 17 members of the ECM ensembles with low pressure out to our west-northwest. Again, high pressure up towards Scandinavia. They're bringing in a little bit more of a westerly flow. And then 15, including the control and the operation run. The operation run is the run we're just looking at, but are very, very unsettled at day 10 with a deep trough over top of the country, some ridging up to our north. I think cool roads are leading to a very wet first week to November, extending out beyond that to 2 weeks' time, which gets us to the 10th of November. These are the options that we've got, and seemingly they are very unsettled. So 13 just here with low pressure through the North Atlantic into the UK. Another 10 with low pressure coming in off the Atlantic into the UK. Another 10 with low pressure centred over the top of the country. This one's got more of a northern blocking signal, but we're still unsettled even with that one. 9 with low pressure more out to the northwest, but of course that's still going to be quite unsettled. And then another 9 that have us in a battle with low pressure out to the west. And this option has the biggest ridge to our northeast. That's a big ridge of high pressure over Scandinavia. But again, the upshot with that is that we are probably having weather fronts stuck in the middle, not able to progress west to east in their normal fashion, and so that can distribute a lot of rain in a very short time over the country when fronts get stuck like that. This looks like it's going to be a very unsettled first week to 10 days of November. Temperatures are up in the air, if you pardon the pun. They could be cool, they could be mild, but I think definitely this looks like the Deluge is back in business for the first week to 10 days of November. Finally, the Cephas V2 is looking like this, and these are 500 millibar heights broken down into week periods. The first week period takes us from the 26th of October to the 1st of November. The coming week has the above average heights blocking to the north, strong northern blocking signal, some high pressure down to the southwest as well. It is a few days of drier but also quite cold weather, despite this ridge down to the southwest, which of course is trying to bring up warm air from the south. Despite that, the warm air is really going in that sort of direction, and we're actually bringing quite cold air from the north or the northeast. So drier but cold in the days ahead. But then all change, look for week 2, and it's all changed to very unsettled weather. This is the 2nd to the 8th of November. Deep trough of below average heights over to the east of the country. Blocking continues around Greenland to the North Atlantic. We'll be bringing in cold sort of northerly type winds, but we're also unsettled, so cold and wet there from the 2nd to the 8th of November. Could be substantially wetter than average. Week 3 is going to be the 9th to the 15th of November. Low pressure still in control. This time sort of over and slightly to the west of us. Still some northern blocking to our north. That also looks very, very unsettled heading up to the middle of November. And then finally we finish up in week 4. It's the 16th to 22nd of November. A little bit of a change in that we're building high pressure to our south and southeast, with low pressure out to the northwest. This would be a milder scenario. We would bring the winds up from the southwest. But again, the main story is not temperature. It's low pressure bringing further bouts of rain, particularly to northern and western parts of the country. But all areas, I think, would be wet with that. So it looks ominous, I have to say, for the first week to 10 days of November now. A little bit concerned after such a wet second half to September and very wet, exceptionally wet I think it will be, October. We are going to get a couple of drier days, not sort of 5 drier days from tomorrow to Thursday. Useful in that it will allow river levels to drop a little bit. But then as we go into the beginning of November, I think it's a case of watch out, because it really does look as though the deluge is back through the first week to 10 days of November. And as time goes by, the river levels are just going to get higher and higher and higher with this. And I think we have got shades of the autumn of 2000 here. Hopefully we won't see quite such devastating floods as we had in the autumn of 2000, but it does look a little bit worrying. Right, so that's it for your videos for today. I'll get the second Season 1 roundup for the winter of 2019-2020 onto Winter Updates page with a written summary, probably around 5-6 o'clock this evening. And then, of course, I'm going to do the winter update, the 9th winter update. That's going to be with you 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. First video up, only video up actually tomorrow. So 10 a.m. tomorrow, the 9th winter update is a solar special. So it's going to be a very, very interesting watch if you want to know what solar minimum winters can be like, or winters around or near to solar minimum, then we shall tell you tomorrow. And also tomorrow we've got the 4th and final written update for Christmas, and there'll be a live stream on YouTube between 5 and 6 o'clock. We'll be talking about that 9th winter update and taking as many questions as we can. Right, that's all for now though, and thanks for watching.